Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining us for the LearnTech Asia's Women in Learning series. So thank you very much for joining us from Singapore. Am I correct to say?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And Happy New Year to you. It's
Yes,
nice
Happy New
to
Year.
start our week having this
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'll jump right in, with the work that you do and your new baby, the Project Jobless. I think you are very well aware of all of the future of work demands. And then the idea that, the future of work is in the future, but the reality is that it is all the challenges and opportunities are present right now itself, And in relation to our Women in Learning series, in your opinion, what are some of the needs and desires of the working women, whether they are the younger generation or the older generation?
The needs and desire you're talking about. I think when it comes to needs wise, at the end of the day, I subscribe to this needs that is shared by Anthony Robbins. He mentioned that human being has 6 human needs. So at different phase of our life, right, we want to achieve different things so that we feel fulfilled. I think ultimately we want to lead a very fulfilling, happy life. It's just what makes us happy at different stage of our life. So when it comes to women per se, I think family could be one, having good relationship could be one. But at the same time, I think our role has expanded over time. The society has progressed towards a point whereby women are also being presented with opportunities to contribute to the community, as a fellow worker, as a fellow profession. So I think that aspect of us, we still want to be able to contribute, to be able to recognize for our competence and skills. So in terms of desire, I think we still have that heart to be part of the community, part of the workforce. So that is something that I don't think it will change too much with time, no matter how much technology has changed. I think fundamentally as a human being, this is something that we all look forward to. Yeah, so that is the desire part, I feel. Then when it comes to the needs part, then needs could be something that is a little bit more realistic. We are living in a more, it's a real world, right? When at the same time, I guess financial security could be important, and being able to work, okay, it also allows you to get income, get a salary for the start. All right, so either you can contribute to a better quality of living for your entire family, that could be one, or you could just better yourself. I think because I speak, because I came from Singapore, I'm brought up here, so I think my exposure and the opportunities that I'm presented with may not be the same as my fellow ladies who are based in other countries. So I cannot say it's the same for everyone. And I think every woman in different demographics have their own set of obstacles and challenge to overcome. So for us to get a job, for us to be part of the workforce, it has very different objective and very different motivation. Yeah. So I know LearnTech Asia, you all reach out to a wide group of community of ladies from all around the world, right? So I don't think it's. I think we need to have that broad perspective, that overview to understand that, hey, we came from different background, different culture, different education, all right? So we have different motivation why we want to work.
Yeah, that's so true. I like that what you said is I think it rings very true, that we have to understand that women from different socioeconomic status or different socioeconomic backgrounds, their different education backgrounds, they have very different needs and desires. But I like also how you broke it down, like our desire is to have the opportunity to balance family and work life. And the need is obviously financial security, kind of regardless of whatever socioeconomic status you are in, financial security is always a very big thing as well. Yeah. Okay, so based on your own experience as a Singaporean woman, how can women in Singapore pursue their lifelong learning, or rather more specifically, how important is lifelong learning to meeting the needs and desires of a Singaporean woman, let's say from your background?
Okay, I think at the end of the day, lifelong learning, or we call it continuous learning, it has become a must. So in the world of skills right now, so there's this thing called half-life of skills. So half-life, if you remember the term half-life, it was usually used in physics, radioactivity substance, how long it takes to halve its value. Okay, so when you talk about half-life of skills, it's the same. Things are changing so fast that our skills, if we don't keep ourselves updated, the value will be reduced by half in a very short period of time. So for general skills like soft skills, leadership, communication, the half-life is 5 years. So if you don't continuously upgrade yourself, 5 years later, the whatever that you possess at the beginning is only half its value. Then when it comes to technical skills, the half-life is about 2.5 years. So it's even shorter. So you are telling me, so if you're telling me you know digital marketing skills, but you got the skills 10 years ago, 2.5 years is 4 rounds decrease already. So you realize that your skills, not that it is not good, but it may not be as relevant as today's context. So upgrading or continuous learning or lifelong learning, there are so many fancy full term. I think at the end of the day, what we are doing here is to make sure that we stay as relevant as possible. We stay competitive. And if you can stay relevant and competitive, then ideally you can be ahead of the game, because you want to become irreplaceable, right?
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, lifelong learning, continuous learning is very important. And it's not just in the context of Singapore. I think every country, right, women are taking up different roles in different supply chain, for example. So all of us need to understand how the landscape is changing so that we can keep ourselves updated to what is required of us. So I definitely think that is very, very important.
Yeah. I mean, I think, having had a look at Project Jobless, which you can share a bit more if you would like to, you highlighted about how, of course, there's either the Great Resignation or a significant amount of unemployment amongst people right now, and that number or the impact is also because of automation. So as you mentioned just now, the half-life of either the technical skill or even like our soft skill or the power skills like leadership and communication, all of those are being impacted by automation. So in your opinion, what are some of the skills that women across the board, regardless of industry, maybe if you have in mind, what are some of the skills that we need to be more mindful of about learning along the way?
Okay, so as much as possible, I think because with us stepping into fourth industry revolution, with us, going through digital revolution, it is no doubt that if you have STEM education, it will be good. So you have science, technical, mathematics, etc. It will be good if you have those background, and it will be good if you have digital skills. Okay, so, but of course, I'm not saying that all women, you have to be on the creator side of things, because not everyone has talent in becoming a software developer, for example. Like for one, I don't fancy coding as much, you see. So you have to understand that, number one, I think you need to understand where the world is right now. How is the world changing? So you understand where is the gap that you need to fill. If you do not have the technical aspect of skill, that means you are not technically inclined. You cannot code, you cannot create algorithm. It's okay, yeah, but what you need to do is you have to make sure that you are a super user. You can leverage on all these tools, all these softwares, and integrate with your current skills so that you are still competitive. Because as much as people are creating, you also need people to use, right? So you have to fall in one of those spectrum. I really believe so. Yeah, but if let's say you are in the middle, you're sandwiched in the middle, and let's say your job is very routine, it's very task-based, day in, day out, right? You pretty much do the same thing, then that is a very dangerous zone.
Yeah. I think that's so on point also about how you don't have to be on the creator side, because for me, I'm definitely not on the coding no, that's so not me. But I love using the platforms. I love using digital platforms. So you reminded me of the importance of being a user as well, rather than so that's a good one to hear, because I think a lot of people are users more than they are the creators, and sometimes we don't realize that as users we bring value. So we just need to know how to leverage our knowledge and our application of the platforms into our job as well. So I think that's a very, very good one. Actually, I think you've kind of covered with the other question that I wanted to ask was actually, how have women been impacted by the fourth industrial revolution? But maybe we can break it down into the women in different groups. So I think we highlighted this, we talked about this before, the employed, self-employed, and unemployed. Do you think that there is a difference in the three groups of women and how they've been impacted by the fourth industrial revolution or automation in general?
Maybe because I serve a huge target audience. I work with a huge target audience. So to be honest, if it's of any comfort to anyone who is watching this, everyone is impacted. So it's only to the degree, how much are you being affected? So So for ladies per se, for women per se, so it depends on the role that you are currently in right now. So according to McKinsey, by 2030, between 40 to 160 million women will be affected, or they will have to transit into new occupation. So the first group of people that will definitely be impacted will be people who have been doing low skilled jobs like factory, very repetitive, right? So long as you are in very repetitive tasks, you are bound to be affected very much. Yeah, so then that is the group of women who are employed, but maybe in developing economies, whereby you have factories and manufacturing plants. Yeah, then of course you have self-employed ladies. If let's say some of them, they have families, they have children. Okay, so being self-employed means you have to do a lot of things on your end. So for you to be very effective, right, you probably have to leverage on different technology tools to automate the processes so that you can free up your time to do more strategic planning or strategic outreach. And so for self-employed ladies, I also believe that harnessing the power of technology is very important. And to me, I think at the end of the day, you need to have a global mindset. Yeah, because no matter which country you are, I think all of us are interconnected, all of us are interlinked. So if you are just very focused within your own little space, I say little space because Singapore is very small. Okay, if you're very focused on your own space, right, without exposing yourself to what the global world is looking like, then it is also very dangerous. So for us to become irreplaceable, to stay relevant, I think number one is really the knowledge about yourself and the knowledge about the world. So knowledge about yourself, I'm talking about personal clarity. So personal clarity, you need to know what's your strength, your talent, what's your interest. Because as much as I know that I'm a career coach and then I help professionals to get back into workforce, to pivot, to achieve career success, at the end of the day, fundamentally, you want to do work that is meaningful. I think salary is important, but sometimes up to a certain point, salary is just that there are a lot of people leaving their jobs even though they are being paid well. Why? Yeah, because maybe it's not fulfilling, it's draining them out, they are not happy. So fundamentally, getting into a job, you must be able to do meaningful work, purposeful work. So that is where personal clarity comes in. You need to understand yourself. Once you understand yourself, then the next step is to understand the world. Then you talk about fourth industrial revolution. Then to help the listeners or audience who are watching in, then perhaps the question that you can ask yourself, you don't need to talk about macroeconomy because maybe we are not trained to talk about it, or it has been a while since you talk about big economies, right? Which is fine. So my question to you is, how is your industry being affected right now? So you just look at your own industry. So if you are in education, how is education affected by technology? That's one. Then the next question you can ask yourself is, how is your role being affected? So if let's say I'm an administrator working in a school, okay, so I'll be thinking, how will technology affect the school? And when the school is affected, how will it affect me? So when you can answer these two questions, can you already understand that you're actually figuring out what is a potential threat? When you figure out what is a potential threat, then you can find solution. Yeah, so I think the knowledge of yourself and the knowledge of the world is very important. Yeah, so that is something that I will encourage, be it self-employed, employed, or out of work individuals at this point in time, right, to have that figure out and take it as a chance to do a reset to your career. So I think one great thing about COVID is that it paused the entire world. So I mentioned, right, if it's of any comfort, it is the same for everyone. Everyone is trying to figure out. It's just how much you're being affected and how fast you figure it out. It's the speed here. Yeah, so at the end of the day, I think COVID is a very good reset. Yeah, it's a good reset to how we can start to evaluate our career choices. Yeah, so you can also start to use this chance to think about what you want in your career and then have a more sustainable career plan moving forward.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a very good point. COVID is a very good moment for us to reset. And it also really, while we are resetting, we realize how valuable lifelong learning or continuous learning is, because it really helps you. I think I also I read a study somewhere, but this was a couple of years, even just before COVID, they already highlighted that the millennial and the Gen Z workforce, more and more so, they are that generation that doesn't really, yes, they want the salary for financial security and all of that, but it's not necessarily just that. They're looking for jobs that will meet their personal objectives, their personal clarity, as you mentioned. So I think that is something moving forward, we have to acknowledge that, you know, because they are the growing generation, of course.
Correct.
And
right.
then and how lifelong learning really intertwines and marries that, because without learning, without wanting to learn or the need to skill up in whatever aspect, that really affects how you can marry your personal clarity and what the world needs or how the world is changing. That's for sure. What do you think the future of learning looks like for women who will stay in the same industry, whether they want to transition inside the same industry or not, but what does the future of learning look like for them?
I think a lot of people will have to take responsibility for their own growth. Okay, so it's no longer, okay, companies some organization may be a bit more forward looking. They may be putting in a lot more training programs to help women, to help everyone to get up to speed. Okay, so there are some organizations like that, but that doesn't mean that a lot other organizations have the resources and capacity to do that. So if you're talking about the future of work and then how learning can come in place, right? I think it is very much in your own hands. So depending on which side of the table you're at, some people will feel like, yes, I have control over my learning. I can decide what I want to learn, how I want to learn at my own pace and pick up the skill. So that is people who probably enjoy taking control back. But of course, there's on the other side of the table whereby if nobody create the structure and framework for you, you tend to slack off, you tend to just forget about it. So I hope most of you belong to the first category, whereby you will feel like, okay, now I have control, I can take control back. And learning is made a lot easier right now. I think there's like online learning, online courses. Some of the courses are even at a very affordable rate. Some courses are free. And if let's say you don't want to apply for any courses, there's YouTube. There's so many good content on YouTube. Okay, you don't watch drama and listen to, not so nutritious stuff, right? There's a lot of good stuff on YouTube. And then also there are association and communities like LearnTech Asia is a good community. Like y'all have articles and everything to educate and empower women. So I think there are associations and communities like this itself whereby so I think we are not lack of resources. We are not lack of the how. So at the end of this, whether do you want it? So when it comes to future of learning, I think everybody has to take charge of their own learning right now. And of course, there will be a lot more digital, more online, things like what we are doing right now. You are based in Malaysia, I'm based in Singapore, but we can have good conversation. Last time, probably, we don't think this is possible, but we may want to fly, but now it's a norm already. This is a norm already. So that's what I feel. I feel like I think that future of learning will be very digital, very customized, and then at the same time is within individuals' control.
Correct. I think what you say is very true. That I think, because like we also discussed that we wanted to kind of break it down into the different groups of women, but you've covered it very well and very holistically. That learning is literally at our fingertips today, because we are mostly on our mobiles nowadays, or even if our laptop, and things like that. Everything learning is so accessible, especially with YouTube, and then you can just Google things nowadays as well. So it's also a lot on our part, on the individual's part, to really take the initiative to learn. And of course, there is a strong need or a strong force that kind of like pushes us to learn today as well. And I like that you highlighted that not all companies actually have the resources to do so, to actually provide their workers with all the opportunities. So I think what you're highlighting is, I like how you've highlighted that. I mean, throughout the entire conversation so far, you've kind of married the fact that the individual has to take the initiative to step up and go like, hey, I need to learn. Let me figure out what are the skills that I need to learn, depending on whether I want to stay within the career or the industry that I'm in now, or whether I want to pivot out of it and all of that. And also on the part of organizations to step up and recognize that without kind of like upskilling or reskilling your employees, you kind of like the durability of the company is obviously lesser or lower, and also just knowing to understand what is going on, basically.
I mean, employees can also be also can get creative. I mean, sometimes your company may not have the manpower, may not have the resources to do out training plans. But as an individual, if you take charge of your own career success, you take charge of your own learning, you figure out the gap, then this is where you can actually have a conversation with your management, with your boss. You know, is there a learning arrangement that I can do with the company that I can learn and work at the same time? Or, you know, there is some sort of sponsorship, then, you know, and then whatever that you learn, you can help the company to grow. You know, if you are able to create conversation that is win-win for both parties, I don't think that it is difficult for deeper discussion to take place. Whether the bosses agree or not is a different story. Some bosses may not have the foresight, which is true. So if you propose and the company doesn't have the foresight, it also gives you a very clear indication whether this company is a place for you to grow. Yeah, but I mean, but at the end of the day, it's also, you know, being creative, being resourceful to have discussion, to make things work for yourself. Yeah. So for me, I guess I'm naturally a little bit more introspective. I will always want to go back to myself, because that is something that I can control. The only thing that I can control is myself. Everything else is not within my control, you see. Like whether it will rain, whether the company will like me, whether the company will give me bonus or not, it's something totally not within my control. So probably that's why a lot of things that I've said is very introspective. Yeah.
No, but I think that's good, because you also obviously bring in a different perspective to the conversation, that it is a lot about what can we do as individuals, rather than just solely relying on being like always looking for that helping hand. You yourself can be that helping hand. And you mentioned just now about how we can figure out within the company itself, you can kind of figure out for yourself how you can create that learning culture. You don't have to wait for your bosses to make the time. You yourself as an employee, if you're interested in learning, you can go about with it. And I think we have an article on LearnTech itself about how there's this, not peer-to-peer, but we call it mentoring or reverse mentoring in itself within the company. And it doesn't have to be like a formal mentoring or mentorship. It can be a very informal one. I feel like having conversations with you and to be honest, I'm learning so much just by having conversations. And although yes, this is a bit more of a structured one, but our conversation is also an informal one, because you're just continuously learning from one another.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. I mean, it's true. When I'm on platforms like this sharing, I think it's also two-way. You know, when I'm saying out, I'm also
the reminder,
taking it back myself. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So learning works both ways. I think this kind of energy goes both ways.
Yeah, I think before we come to an end, maybe just what is your own personal, because you've been so introspective so far, what is the biggest skill up you have done in the past 2 years, and maybe what are you planning to skill up for 2022?
Okay, so I think one of the things that I really embarked on, which is never I thought if I will do, is becoming a content creator, becoming a voice for something that I believe in. Previously, I was always I'm still in the private sector, but recently I'm in the private sector serving the public. So previously I was always in the private sector. So I think the environment, the people that I meet is slightly different. So these 3 years, I have been working with a lot more people from the public communities. So one thing that I also learned to pick up is becoming a content creator, putting myself out there, talking, and then writing articles, doing videos. You know, these are things that is very uncomfortable for me, super uncomfortable. So one of the things that I pick up is content creating skills, basic video skills, how to do a decent YouTube. If you see my YouTube videos, I'm still learning.
But I think that's the best part though, because it's very natural. It's, it's organic,
Yeah, but there's always expectation, right? So there's expectation from the audience or from myself. So I'm learning. So one thing that I really pick up during this year, like technical skill that I pick up, is the video part of things, the content creator part of things, learning to be okay speaking to the camera, Yeah, so I think all these things take skills and takes time to practice. So a lot of people think that, hey, Sam, it's very natural for you to do this because you have been speaking and training, but it is different because I used to do physical face-to-face, but now I'm doing online and there's no audience, there's no interaction. At least you are talking to me, you're laughing with me and smiling with me. I get interaction, but if it's it's a pure webinar, is
Yeah.
usually quite one directional, right?
Yes, yeah.
So that is something that I am definitely learning. The other one that I'm learning is, of course, learning. I totally immerse myself in industry revolution, understanding the macro economy. So I read a lot of reports. I listen to a lot of forums just to get myself up to speed and understand what is happening in the bigger landscape. And I think all these things is very important because it makes me a more competent, a more relevant career coach when I'm working with my clients.
Yeah, that's so true. I completely resonate with you on what do you call that, not being very comfortable in front of the camera. I mean, I used to be a lecturer, so I'm good with like face-to-face in person.
Okay.
But being in front of the camera, even though you're here, I'm like all nervous. No, not nervous, but you know, it's just a very foreign
unnatural
world.
It's very unnatural.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So I completely
you have to
understand.
like stare at the camera and then you know, the kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
and
we get it. So for
sorry.
No, it's okay. So for anyone who is going through interview, video interview especially, you have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. And it's a learning process, I would say. Every time, the more you do it, I wouldn't say you become more comfortable with it, but you learn something different. You know, you figure out how to put your camera, you figure out how to make sure that your earphones are plugged in properly. It becomes more of a second-hand nature along the way. It doesn't automatically become that way. That's something I've learned. I think I would say maybe for you as well.
Yeah. It's a learned skill. Yes,
it's a learned skill for sure. Okay, Samantha, I want to say thank you so much for having this conversation with us, you know, with LEARNTech Asia. And I hope the women in learning who are following this series, you have learned much from Samantha. We will obviously be sharing her details as well. So thank you very much, Samantha.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, you and your team. I think it was a very nice series that you put together. So I hope to have more conversations with this entire group of awesome ladies who are tuning in.
Yep. Thank you.